Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video here on runatoncE.com. This is Emty. Some of you may have seen in recent weeks the 5-card solver got published on Run It Once in the Vision software, and I'm very excited to dive into some strategy. So, why should we play or study 5-card PLO? I would say compared to 4-card, it's still a very undiscovered game, as is 4-card PLO as well, if you, for example, compare it to No Limit Hold'em. But especially for 5-card, up until recently, there has not been much access, or maybe you didn't have any access to any solvers or software, which of course has changed now. We can see a pretty increasing trend when it comes to the popularity of 5-card and, to be frank, also 6-card PLO. You see it more and more coming up in live casinos, depending where you're playing out there in the world. For example, in the UK, I heard it's pretty popular, maybe in the Scandinavian countries as well. In Vegas, the 5-card games are available to some extent as well. And in online games, particularly on GG Poker, depending on the time of the day, there are even more 5-card tables running than 4 cards. I think for the recreational player, it's more attractive because, the hands look all very playable, so they get very loose. Equities are running pretty close, so there's in terms of variance, higher variance, a bigger chance for the recreational player to have some winning streaks, which I think makes this game quite attractive for all players, actually. The game tends to be extremely loose. It's usually represented by the VPIP, a lot of high VPIP players at the tables. A lot of limping, a lot of calling, white raises, which we'll see later is definitely not the optimal strategy. I can imagine that every hand looks pretty playable when you have 5 cards out of the deck in your hand. But having good ranges, which can be tied from certain positions, is definitely a good strategy. And therefore, it's also good when all the other players are deviating with a pretty loose strategy. For all the 4-card concepts that I have introduced, explained, showcased in previous videos, I would make the assumption that they are all extremely useful for 5-card as well. Because, what I always try to incentivize you to think about is thinking in ranges, thinking of on which board does which player have the range advantage, which player has a polarity advantage, and thinking about that and coming to a conclusion or to a result helps us to really define our strategy and understand, is this a high frequency c-bet spot? Is it a low frequency c-bet spot? Should we lead this board a lot, etc.? So, as I mentioned, range versus range awareness, post-flop strategies such as c-bet strategies and single raise pots or free bet pots. Also equity estimations. I have that a lot with my students who transition from no limit to 4-card. They always wonder, is this hand strong enough to stack off? Am I pushing equity? Is this a punt? I had so little equity. I think that's something that you develop and gain as a skill by experience and by curiosity to work with the equity tools and to get an understanding of how much equity we have against the stack off range. And that is definitely very helpful for 5-card PLO as well. Last but not least, finding the right exploits. Also something I talk a lot in my kind of play and explain videos or live play videos. Our position will deviate a lot from the optimal strategy. So just sticking to our optimal strategy won't be the maximum EV play. And therefore we have to think about how to adjust our strategy based on the deviations that our opponent have. We have done that already a lot in previous 4-card videos, and that will definitely help as well to understand on how to find the right exploits in a 5-card PLO environment. When it comes to pool observation, so what we so far have talked about, that everyone is just very loose. So we see that being represented in big pots, a lot of pre-flop multi-way all-ins, also in general higher average VPIPs. So players just tend to open, raise, and call way more hands than in 4-card PLO. We'll see later if that's a good adjustment or not. What you hear players often saying when you watch live streams or maybe play yourself is that every hand looks so playable. That's of course something that we can also, or you might have also observed when you were a No Limit Hold'em player and then switched to 4-card, that every hand looks so attractive and you just want to get involved with it in a pot. But the more and more we learned about the strategy behind PLO 4-card, we also understood that, there's a lot of folding going on, that certain hands are not as good as we might have thought. And that will definitely hold true for 5-card PLO as well. Players do also often continue with hands that have little to no nut equity. So that's something in PLO 4-card that a lot of coaches are praising. Like, think about the nuttiness of your hand when you're going multi-way. Can you make the nuts? How do you expect your equity to be with the non-nutted hand? What kind of hands are we up against? And that definitely will become even more important in 5-card PLO, to think about the nuttiness of our hand. Players who do get involved with hands that have little to no nuttiness, get into a lot of troubles post-flop due to very strong domination. So it's probably something for some later episodes, when we do move over to some post-flop strategy. But for now, we can stick to pre-flop and make the assumption that everyone is just pretty loosey-goosey on the 5-card streets. So I would say let's start with looking at some raise first in frequencies and have a 1-to-1 comparison from 4 and 5 cards from a 4 and 5 card game. So we have a 4-card here on the left side and 5-card on the right hand side. So you should be quite familiar with these numbers. These numbers are extracted from PLO Vision on run at once with the PLO 500 rake structure. So opening 18% in early position, 22% in MP, 30% in cutoff, 46% on the button, and with a no-limit strategy opening around 39% of the time from the small blind. We'll now have a look at the 5-card frequencies, and no, it was not a mistake that I just copy-pasted the table and just changed the color. Actually, these are the frequencies extracted from the 5-card Vision results. So we can see extremely similar frequencies from all kinds of positions. There's a slight deviation on cutoff and on the button by just 1 percentage point, but pretty negligible. So I think that might already be surprising to some of you to see these very similar raise first in frequencies in 4-card and 5-card, which already means that in terms of raise first in, there's definitely not an incentive for us to get involved with more hands, only because we have one more card in our hand, but still be, especially in the early positions, extremely picky with the hands that we want to get involved with. So the question now is all the same, so all good. And for that, I would actually dive into also the Vision and have a 1-to-1 comparison left and right. So on the left-hand side, we have the 4-card preflop sim from Visions, and on the right-hand side, the 5-card solution. For now, I will start with 100 big blinds, which should be the most common buy-in for any stake. And we're going to start from the earliest position from under the gun, because if we nail down these hands, then we already know what is our baseline for opening from all positions. And for later positions, which hands do we basically add? So while I was opening or setting here these settings, there was already this interesting hand coming up here on the right hand side. King, Jack, 10-10 free, double suited. Double suited hands appear quite often in 5 cards compared to 4 cards combinatorically. Also in 5 card, you won't have any rainbow hands anymore. And I'd actually quickly like to dive into Pro Poker Tools to illustrate this. So if we ask here in this tool, again, to showcase, I went just here for the plus to ask a new question, how often, and then player 1, match hand range, and I entered all the suit combinations for double suited hands. Then we can see we have double suited hands in 4 cards 13% of the time. Now, if we switch this up to 5 cards and we leave every hand, so 100% of our range in there, and have the same question with the double suits, then we should get a result where we have more hands, more double suited hands. And indeed, we can see we have double suited hands in PLO 5 cards almost 50% of the time. So that's almost 4 times as much as in 4 card PLO. And I think that's already one mistake where players see, oh, I have a double suited hand with a Broadway pair and it's very strong. But yeah, we have to keep in mind that, we cannot play 40, 50, 60% of our hands and therefore have to definitely cut out some hands. So this hand is already a tricky one, or maybe a bit of an easy one because we don't have the king high suit. So I would just fold this one. It seems like the correct answer. So we can quickly hit the enter button and have a look at all the suit combinations. And we see there are already quite some of them. And here we do see a mixed frequency for the double suit combination. And it looks like that when we do have the king high suit and the jack high suit, that then we have the green light to go for the race. Let's start with the top of our range. That is obviously aces, the hand that we play the most from early position in 4 card and hopefully also in 5 cards. So let's type in here aces and aces and have a quick 1-to-1 comparison. And yeah, the outcome is not surprising that we're raising aces 100% of the time, especially when we remove trip aces. We can see there's still 1% of folding, but that's really due to the trip aces. You can also do that on the left-hand side. Then we can see that we're playing 100% of hands, but an interesting insight that we have here is here in the middle, the area I just marked on the left side. We can see in PLO 4 card, we have aces 2.5% of the time. Whereas in PLO 5 card, we have aces 4% of the time. So if you think back, we're opening 18% from early position and already 4% of these hands are made up by aces. Then almost 1/4 of our early position opening range consists of aces. So that's quite interesting. If we move further to the next hand category, which is pocket kings, and I'll remove the ace because ace king king combinations in 4 card as well as in 5 card is a combination that is still almost being treated like pocket aces. So basically being played purely. And we will have a comparison left and right with 4 card and 5 card. Let's give it 1 second to load up. So pocket kings, excluding an ace and excluding trip kings, we can see on the left-hand side in the early position at 4 card, we're opening around 2/3 of the time with 67%. But on the right-hand side, kings are only being opened 30% of the time. So, and even double suited kings we can see here, are only being played half of the time. So I think that's already, a very interesting takeaway that kings actually don't have so much value anymore. And that's something that we also had to learn when we were transitioning from no limit hold'em to 4 cards. That kings to get in preflop or to free bet a lot is just not a hand that performs as great in 4-card than it does in No Limit Hold'em, where it's just the second best hand. And yeah, so we have to basically cut down on a lot of kings. So if we move further to pocket queens and remove kings, or just a king, and pocket kings and trip queens, there we go. And have a look at that as well. So 30% on the right hand side is being raised with kings without an ace. And when we go down to queens, then yeah, only 20% now of our hands are being played. And also in a 4-card environment, queens definitely prefer to have a lot of good suits and decent connectivity. So we can see in 4-card, double suited queens are being played 85% of the time, whereas double suited queens in a 5-card environment are only being played 33% of the time. And another category that we can see here is the one below. It's a category we're not familiar with yet from 4-card, and that is having a triple double suit. So 2 and 3 suits, 2 and 3 suit combo. For example, here 2 hearts and 3 clubs. And that's definitely a combo that harms us. It's like, do we prefer to have a suited hand preflop with 2 suits or with 3 suits? Then the clear answer is, of course, the ones with 2 suits, because we have a higher likelihood to make a flush draw or to make flushes on the board. And we can therefore also see that having 3 suits is definitely bad. With the 2 suits, only raising 24% of the time. Whereas with the pure double suits, I call them pure because we don't have a third suit, open raising around 33% of hands with our pocket queens. If we quickly move over to the button, because that's basically the other extreme of hands, because under the gun, we are the tightest, and on the button, we are the loosest. MP, we're just a pip tighter than early position, so we will, at one point when we study a lot of these hands, or when you study a lot of your hands, you will get an idea how your under the gun range is constructed, and then you will understand, okay, maybe here a pip wider with my kings, or here a pip wider with my rundown, which is a fold from under gun, but probably an open from MP. You will get a feel for it and apply these ranges correctly. But of course, under the gun opening 18% of hands, button 46% of hands, so there's a huge gap. And so we definitely want to have a quick look at these hands as well. So 100 big blinds button. And we can look at similar hands. So for example, having kings without an ace and no trip kings. Let's put the same filter to the right. Kings, no ace, no trip kings. It's a hand that on the button is just still too strong to fold. So we can see very, very little folding with kings. I guess we can just simplify and pure raise. So let's move one step further to queens. And we can see in a 4-card environment on the left-hand side, we're still raising close to 100% of our queens. I guess that we can also just make the simplification there and raise all queens from the button. Whereas now on the right-hand side with queens, we can see already, some hands being deducted, from our overall preflop range with pocket queens. You can see, for example, double suited ones still almost pure raising, but once we go into the single suited or trip suited category, or maybe 4 suited, then we definitely have to start doing some folding. And these are usually the folds where we just don't have a lot of connectivity, no double pairs, and these kind of hands. So for example, a hand like 7-4 deuce would be a clear fold, I think, unless we're double suited on the right hand side. Let's have a look. Actually, a fold with all suit combinations, whereas a hand like Queen 7-4 in a 4-card environment is being even raised in the rainbow version. And we could go even weaker to something like pocket 10s just to wrap up our Broadway pairs. So if we remove queens, jacks, and trip 10s, and maybe let's also remove the ace, Copy paste it here. And I have a comparison of these frequencies. We can see left-hand side with pocket tens still raising a lot, 83% of our hands. And on the right-hand side, we start still folding a bit more, let's say compared to queens with the pocket tens. But again, I think the ace is a pretty key card when it comes to raising. So we can see a lot of aces or ace-high suits that are raising. So if we also remove the ace, let's say left and right, then I think we will also see a big drop in our raising frequency from initially 32% to, let's give it one more second, 41%. Yeah, so almost getting to a point where we only raise half of our pocket tens only. Another interesting category I have identified in 5-card PLO is double pairs. So, for example, let's start with like one of the weakest double pairs. That would be something like 7-7 deuce deuce. We can see in 4-card PLO, these hands are being pure raised. And in 5-card PLO, a hand like 7-7 deuce deuce, we can see is almost always being folded like 95% of the time. And the only exception where we do raise 7-7 deuce deuce is when we have an ace and a nut suit with it. So that's really the absolute exception. If we go even to some of the stronger double pairs, like connected, let's say something like 7-7 6-5-5. Yeah, we don't have to look further on the left-hand side, because if the weakest double pair we could imagine is an open in the rainbow version, then all the other double pairs are being opened as well. But for example, even a connected hand like 7-7 6-5-5 single suited is a fold in 5-card PLO, which to me was very surprising. Especially when we go back to the position we have looked at first, under the gun, and we start looking at some of the stronger double pairs, then it will be quite eye-opening of how much we are actually folding from early position. So let's, for example, not look at something like 7-7-5-5 or 7-7 deuce deuce, but let's go a bit stronger and look at something like 10-10-7-7, for example. A hand like 10-10-7-7 is still folding almost 60% of the time, and we can see again the very many exceptions that have the ace. So if we remove the ace from our preflop hand selection, then we can see that we're just folding a bunch of our 10-10-7-7. So I would assume the ones that we're still raising are the ones that do give us connectivity with the double suits. So something like 10-10-8-7-7, Jack 10-10-7-7. Let's go a bit down. Yeah, King 10-10-7-7. But the ones where we have like a low card, I think there were some folds here. Yeah, so 10-10-7-5, 10-10-7-7-5, 10-10-7-7-3 are actually also folds from under the gun.